Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to another weekly wrap-up. It is April Fool's Day and Easter Sunday and it is snowing. Yesterday I was outside in beautiful sunny weather doing garden work, and today we're supposed to get 2 to 4 inches of snow. I thought it was supposed to be spring or something, I guess not. Anyway, before I actually get into the books that I read this past week, I have some housekeeping notes. Firstly, yesterday the 2018 Hugo Award nominees were announced, and next weekend on April 7th, which is a Saturday, I'm going to host a live show where I and some friends chat about our thoughts and feelings on the shortlist. So that's going to be at 10 a.m. Central Time, which is 11 Eastern and 4 p.m. GMT. So if you're interested, if you have the time or the inclination, drop on by and talk to us in the chat. We're going to have a good time. It's going to be pretty casual. Secondly, April is going to be a very busy month for me, and between work commitments and personal life vacation stuff, I'm going to be away for quite a bit of April. I decided to cut back on my video schedule somewhat so I don't stress out too much, so I'm only going to be doing 1 video per week. Maybe more if I have the time and the patience, but we will see. I just figured it would be good to take a slight step back and just take a vacation from everything when I'm actually on vacation. But I will be back full steam ahead in May, I'm pretty sure. The other thing about April is that I've basically banned myself from getting library books, and I'm going to try to read only books that I own. I've tried to do this in the past and I've never been very successful at it because I just couldn't stop getting library books. But yesterday I returned all of my library checkouts, some of them unread and unfinished. I put a bunch of my holds on hold. And I've cleared the decks and I'm ready to go. This isn't a project, I don't have much to say about it really, it's just that I've been planning to do this for a couple of weeks and I thought I would mention it, because if I mention it I will try a bit harder to actually do it. So with that, onwards to the 4 books that I finished this past week. Firstly, I read Waking Gods by Sylvain Neuvel, which is the 2nd book in the Themis Files series, and it's nominated for the BookTube SFF Awards this year. I talked about the 1st book in the series last week and I didn't really like it at all, and I feel similarly about this one, except that I actually enjoyed the experience of it a bit more since I listened to it on audiobook. A bunch of people recommended this on audio because it has a full cast and that really helps bring the story and the characters to life, and I'm really glad I checked it out because that was very true. I definitely felt like there were distinct characters and personalities, and there was more emotion in the story. But overall, this is a giant robot story. I'm not enjoying the actual plot. I think it's ridiculous and I don't think it's written very well, so I'm out. I have no intentions on reading the 3rd book unless it's nominated for something that I'm reading all the books for. I will try to avoid it. Then I read The Graves of Fine and Private Place by Alan Bradley, which is the 9th Flavia de Luce mystery novel. At this point, I can't say much about the overall plot and the grander story arcs of the series, which I enjoy so much because we're nearing the end and some really big spoilery stuff has happened so far. The mystery though is pretty simple. Flavia and her 2 older sisters are on a summer vacation with Dogger, who is kind of their father's manservant slash jack of all trades around their house. And as they are boating down the river, Flavia catches her trailing hand in the open mouth of a corpse, and they drag it ashore. And of course, Flavia and Dogger begin investigating the man's death. The best thing about the plot of this one is that Flavia and Dogger really team up to investigate together, which is not something that they've really done before, even though they certainly have talked to each other about cases. But Dogger was much more active and present in the story this time, and I loved that. Dogger is one of my favorite characters from the series, and he has pretty extreme PTSD from his experience in the war. He was in a prisoner of war camp with Flavia's father, and the scars of that experience are still very visible with his interactions with people and stuff. And there's this hint at the end of the book about the sort of future for him and Flavia, and I'm really excited about it. I think they're gonna go off and do great things together, basically. And the final two books that I finished this week were A Gathering of Shadows and A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab, which are the second and third books in the Shades of Magic series. The last one, A Conjuring of Light, is nominated for the BookTube SFF Awards, which is why I read the entire series. A Gathering of Shadows was 500 pages of nothing, or what I would call fluffy, indulgent nothing. It was a bunch of character interactions and not much more, and nothing of consequence for the plot happened until the last 50 pages, so I don't know why it was so long. What saved this book for me was Alucard. He's a new character introduced here and I really enjoyed him. He actually seemed like he was having fun. And somebody needs to have fun in this world. So I just kept reading to get to scenes with him, and I particularly enjoyed him with Lila. I also felt like Lila really improved for me in this book. I know a bunch of people don't really like her, but she was actually my second favorite character in the entire series, and even though her backstory is never explained, she has pretty much no history to speak of. In the present day, she seems to be more fleshed out, and this book really showed her more in action and going for what she wants, basically. And then we come to A Conjuring of Light. This one didn't work so well for me. I got about 200 pages into it and then just felt like the story lost its steam completely. I was just done. I didn't care anymore and I still had 400 pages to go. I think it's a combination of two things. Firstly, it was really repetitious. There were so many chapters where it felt like the same thing was being said over and over again, especially the big bad evil villains sections, which were just repetitious phrases like "let me in" and "kneel," and I started skimming that stuff. It was so boring. The other thing is that it became clearer in the first part of this book that the Kel-Lila pairing was actually going to happen, and I wasn't on board with that. I could have cared less about that. And that really matters because I think that the appeal of this series, what people really get invested in, is actually the characters and their emotional arcs and their personal relationships rather than the action or the plot. And I just wasn't feeling most of that. And it doesn't help that Kel is my least favorite character and Lila is my second favorite character, slightly behind Alucard. What this series boils down to for me is it has good ideas, it has a cool premise, it has interesting characters, but the story itself was a little too predictable. Nothing shocking or surprising really happened for me. And while it had interesting characters, it felt like it was too precious about its characters. Like nothing bad could really ever happen to any of them. They were always going to survive. They were always going to have their stories wrapped up with neat little romantic bows. And it could have been darker. It could have been so much more, but it started to feel like this malignant magical force that everyone's fighting against wasn't really that bad, that it really didn't have that many consequences for the world as a whole. And this is something that really frustrated me about the world building in general. This is about 4 different worlds that all have a city called London. And everything focuses on London, but you know, there are millions, billions of other people living in each of these worlds, but everything was just so solely focused on London. And I felt like there were some plot holes there with the malignant force invading and everything. Like, evil magic dude isn't just interested in London, it's gonna take over the entire world. You have to start thinking bigger than just your city, I think. So it could have been more. I did find most of it to be enjoyable, but it wasn't amazing for me. And that is everything that I read this past week. 4 books and a lot of pages. I got through a lot of this on audiobook because I discovered my library has a second audiobook service, not just Overdrive, so that was very handy this week. I do think I'm a bit read out at the moment. It's rare for me to feel that way, but I just powered through a bunch of things and I didn't completely love most of them. So for the rest of my snowy Sunday, I might just watch movies or something. We'll see. So if you have any thoughts on the books that I talked about this week, please leave me a comment down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon, and until then, bye.